This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
In the past, being green was more the purview of the Public Relations Department. But the bean counters have discovered being environmentally friendly can add more green to the balance sheet. How saving the environment can save money. Sustainability expert Dr. Mona Amodeo on this edition of Conversations. I'm Jeff Weeks. Thank you so very much for deciding to spend some time with us. You know, many major corporations spend large sums of money promoting their green initiatives. And sure, it's great public relations, but there's a lot more to it. See, companies are finding out being sustainable can also be profitable. Our guest, Dr. Mona Amodeo, has a PhD in organization development and is founder and president of ID Group Consulting and Creative, a firm specializing in whole systems branding. Dr. Amodeo, welcome.
Thank you, Jeff.
We mentioned in the opening here sustainability, and we've heard that word bandied about quite a bit in the business world in recent years. Sustainability, what is it?
And increasingly bandied about, I would offer, and that's a good thing. Sustainability, I think, depending on who you speak to, there's a lot of different perspectives. Before I give you my definitions, let me give you an interesting something a friend of mine says about sustainability. He says, you know, Mona, sustainability is a lot like teenage sex.
Okay.
A lot of people talk about it. Some do it well, but not anyone's doing it very well. So I think that when we talk about sustainability, if you Google it, you'll find 14 million different definitions of it. And everybody has to come to their definition. But let me give you the official or the definition that's most often discussed, which is a definition that was created by the Brundtland Commission, which was a UN commission on world development. And in a very simple way, sustainability just speaks to the idea that what impact are the actions that we're taking today having on future generations. So when we're thinking about sustainability, really what we want to talk about is how can we ensure that the decisions we make today, be it environmental or social, will ensure that we meet our needs today, right? We can't all run around in grass cloth and we have to have clothes and food and et cetera. So we have to meet our needs today, but at the same time we need to make decisions that will ensure that the next generations, our children and grandchildren, will inherit a world that is livable and that they will be able to have a quality of life that we have.
Was there something in recent years that triggered big business and where they started putting it more at the front of their concerns, at the front of their core values, so to speak?
Yeah, you know, that's interesting, Jeff. When I started working in this field around 7 or 8 years ago, I would tell you that if I talked about sustainability, most people would just sort of glass over. Many business leaders would listen, and say yes. And I'm sure I walked out the door and they would just shake their heads. I think it's like many things in society, we're seeing shifts. We're seeing shifts in what we value. We're seeing shifts in, as both companies and people, of do we really need as much stuff? There is an increased awareness around the fact that we live on a finite planet and that resources, many of them, are not renewable. So I think we've seen increased education. I think we have seen a society that is starting to realize that stuff isn't everything. And that we're going to have to figure out new and different ways of meeting our needs, both from a business perspective as well as from a societal perspective.
Let me talk about the stuff thing, because a lot of people are realizing, unfortunately, the hard way that stuff can cause you an awful lot of economic problems. But I've read some interesting stuff, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this, about this new generation, this Generation Y, I guess, that their attitude towards stuff is, maybe we don't need as much as mom and dad had, and we're more into relationships and we're more into things that matter. Are they pushing a big change in this country and in the world, for that matter?
Yeah, I think so, Jeff. I think, everything, and if we study history, we know everything rolls in cycles. And I can remember my grandmother who would recycle before it was known as recycling everything, right? I mean, she would take her coffee grounds and use that for compost to grow her garden in her backyard. You know, I mean, she saved aluminum foil. She recycled everything, right? And so I think what's happening is that these kids that you're talking, I call them kids, but the people in their 20s and 30s are really reflecting a lot of the values of that post-World War II, that post-Depression, that said that maybe quality is more important than quantity. Maybe it's not about giving up things, but gaining more by having less. Yeah, I think they are driving it, and of course those people. I think there's really two groups, Jeff. I think it is certainly the group you're talking about, but also those of us who are of the baby boomer generation, who are the children of the 60s, who perhaps intended to do it better, but haven't. And we're the people sitting in those CEO offices today. I think we're looking back at our lives and saying, maybe we can do this better. Maybe there's still time for us to make some different types of decisions. So I think you have a kind of a bringing together of two groups. One, the younger people who are really asking the questions that you talked about. Maybe we don't need as much. Maybe it's about relationships. And of course, they've got to rebel against the generation before, right? And then there are those of us in from the 60s generation, I think, who are kind of trying to go back and look at maybe keeping some of the promises that we thus far have failed to keep.
You know, it's interesting because it seems to me that more of the big Fortune 500 type companies and things are becoming more mainstream of how we can save and how we can reduce and reuse and recycle. And I borrow that line from my wife. Used to always say that. She was a franchisee for a little company called The Body Shop for skin and hair, and it goes back, and I can recall that they were doing things 10 or 15 years ago, like bringing in the bottles after you used it for lotion or whatever and refilling it.
Yeah, you mentioned The Body Shop, one of the great pioneers, Anita Roddick, one of the great pioneers of sustainability. And these people, the Body Shop, Tom's of Maine, Ben and Jerry's, those were some of the people early on that really founded their companies with the idea that we don't have to choose between our values and making money. They were really the first to show that there was a real business case for this approach to business. So the body shops, Tom's and Maine's, etc., those were considered fringe companies, kind of really only delivering product to a very limited market. Well, what's happened now is these fringes have now moved to the mainstream. Why? First and foremost, because there are customers looking for it. And so what those guys understood early, when the markets were smaller and people weren't asking these questions, now we see more and more people looking for products that are safe, that are using recycled content or recycled product, that are using natural. Look at just some of look at Whole Foods on a national level. Look at Everman's here in Pensacola as examples of this organic movement. So what we've seen in the last 7 years, 8 years, 9 years is from the fringes to the mainstream, from those are just the greenies, the crazy environmentalists, you know how they are, the hippies. And now when you start having conversations with Walmart, and Walmart has invested time, energy, and effort in the sustainability movement, I think you might want to say that this is real.
Yeah, I think so. Interestingly enough, talking about that so many of the folks who might have been the green or out on the fringe, or what we would refer to as the tree huggers or something along those lines. That I used to kid my wife about that, but I can assure you that she is the farthest thing in the world from being a hippie, and is a very conservative, politically businesswoman. But she told me a long time ago, hey, this makes sense, and now that I look at it, it really does make sense from a financial standpoint, even if you are not as concerned about the environment, you know.
Yeah, I think that's it. We always say there's 1,000 doors in which people can walk into this thing in this world called sustainability, and I don't care which door you walk in as long as you come on in.
Right.
You know, I think that, yes, that when we look at sustainability, not only from doing the right thing, you know, but also the smart thing,
Right.
it's both. The companies that I work with and have had the opportunity to work with, Interfaces and Stonyfield Farms, Green Mountain Coffees, these guys are businessmen
Right.
and women. They realize that they can't make a difference and a contribution to the world if they're not in business, right? These are not for profits.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So what they have figured out very clearly is how to make a profit, make it in a way that respects the environment and society. So, for instance, a Green Mountain Coffee, you know, what they're doing is they make a great product. Okay, because just because it's green, if it's bad, you're not going to buy it, right? The product's got to be good. Body Shop, the product was excellent.
Absolutely.
Interface Carpets, the product is excellent. But what these guys are doing is they're saying you don't have to make a choice between being responsible to the environment and society and making a good product at a good price that the marketplace is looking for. So I think it's no longer choice. I think that's a false argument. You know, we know that if you just start with the very basics from the standpoint of environmental responsibility, and we look at reducing energy, water, content to landfill, etc., billions of dollars are saved that go directly to your bottom line.
Right.
We know that when you ask people different questions, how do we create a great product within a certain framework of environmental and social responsibility? Guess what? They've got to come up with new answers. And that's called innovation. You know, and so innovation drives business and profitability. So this is not just a green thing, so to speak.
Speaking of Interface Carpets, very interesting story, and I want you to tell us more about that. But you were involved with a documentary that some producers, I guess, an independent film company, made about the Interface company. Just give me just a brief little lead into it, and then we're going to play a cut from the movie. But
yeah, so the Interface story is really a phenomenal story, and it's actually was born, and the documentary was born somewhat from Jeff, your example there, where you have a company like the Body Shop or the Patagonia, companies that were founded on these principles of environmental and social responsibility. There were lots of other companies out there who were not.
right,
So Interface represents the majority of the companies out in the world who didn't start out with an intention or a purpose that was either social or environmental, but has changed. So this is a great story of how do you change, of how a culture can be changed, how big visions create greater companies and greater profitability.
what was the name of the movie?
So Right, So Smart.
So Right, So Smart. Let's take a look at it. We'll take a look at the trailer of So Right, So Smart, an independent film about Interface Incorporated.
Some very exciting and very hip and cool companies.
You know, the government may be pretty foolish, but business is not so foolish.
Right now, green businesses are really sexy.
Sustainability is a value that is very specific to business.
It can't be a lefty, progressive, liberal kind of initiative. This is all of us.
If you're not at the table, then you're on the menu.
When you ask business to clean up their mess, there's two reasons for doing that. One is it is their mess. But the second thing is that they can do it really well. They know how to get things done.
You know, there's this crazy carpet company called Interface, and there's a really amazing being named Ray Anderson who's humble enough to say that he wants to surround himself with a conscience.
I had been so damn wrong for so long.
He was the one that recognized
that something had to change, and he changed, and Interface changed.
He has this
vision and warmth and humility and
passion, this commitment to doing something.
When you know that you've got to do something, don't whine about it, just do it.
Until these two roads converge in a very meaningful way, business and sustainability, will we ever really begin to undo the horrific damage that we've seen over the past 100 years? And I think that's exactly what we're seeing now.
The hope I get is in seeing people come up with innovative ideas.
And when we challenge people to think differently, it is amazing what people will come up with.
There's a lot of hunger out there for a message of hope.
It takes a sense of urgency and commitment. Do I have hope? You bet I have hope. That's all I've got left.
We can do things that will reduce our environmental footprint, and guess what? Make us more profitable.
Yeah, we're being green to make more green, and that's fine. That CEO that thinks he has that space where he can say, no, I don't get it, I don't see the return on investment. That guy doesn't get it. He's clueless, he's stupid, he's dead, he doesn't know it yet.
This is a better way to make a bigger profit, and at the same time do it honestly and legitimately and not at the expense of the earth and not at the expense of our great-grandchildren.
So right, so smart. Coming soon.
Ray Anderson, the guy that the documentary was sort of focused around, fascinating fellow. He really grabbed my attention because he, in the documentary, was a guy who had done it, I guess, as he said himself, so wrong for so long. Now, you got to know him pretty well. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so Ray is the founder and of Interface Carpet Manufacturing, founded in Atlanta, Georgia, now a global publicly traded company. And yes, for a year I was able to go into that company and really research it to understand what were the factors that helped, as he called himself, a capitalist, bottom line driven businessman to change his perspective. Forever it was about how do I create great carpet. They've always done that. Innovative leaders, entrepreneurial. But for him, it was about and became about how can I do this and not have the impact we're having on the environment. Obviously, carpet is a petroleum-rich based product. The goal at Interface is by the year 2020, which is approaching quickly, to have zero footprint on the earth. And so they have set about, over the last, starting in 1994, an effort to reduce that footprint around what they call the 7 phases of Mount Sustainability, which is about emissions and water usage and greenhouse gases, et cetera. So there's 7 phases of what they're trying to do. So Ray's story and Interface's story is about a big vision, something that looks impossible, but he and Interface is really showing the world that it can be done. You can take a carpet manufacturer of all things, and you can challenge people to say, how can we have 0 footprint? And they're doing it. And making money, making inroads into the marketplace, creating innovative products. So when he talks about this being not only the right thing to do, but the smart thing to do, Interface is proving that model every day. A phenomenal man, a phenomenal story.
This quote may not be exactly on target, but it was in the documentary. There was something that just jumped out at me, and I said, man, this guy's onto it here. It was one of the gentlemen in the film said something along the lines of, he said, we did not stop using stones in the Stone Age because we ran out of stones. We found a better way to do it, and eventually that's going to happen with oil. Your thoughts on that?
Jeff, this is I had this conversation just yesterday with someone, and we were talking about oil. And he was arguing with me about offshore drilling, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, if you can have a conversation with me today that tells me that oil is a renewable resource and that we can keep doing exactly what we're doing, and that our children and grandchildren will be able to live the way we're living, then I'm happy to have that conversation. It is not a renewable resource, okay? So why wouldn't we figure out a way to use oil, the precious resource that it is, in the very best way we can, not wasting it, not using it when we don't need to, and use it for the things we must. That makes sense to me. And so for us, this is about asking questions that, yes, could we, you and me? Yeah. Could we use oil the rest of our lives? Sure. And can we do it any way we want to do it and be fine? Yes. Yeah. But this isn't just about us.
Right.
This is about my children and grandchildren and their grandchildren. And so, you know, you asked me earlier, why sustainability, why now? And I think, you know, I think meaning is part of what's going on right now. This is a very complicated world. I think that often comes from our, you know, the hyper connectivity we have often also creates a wonder of where do I belong? Right. Do I matter? And I think sustainability responds in a very loud and resounding way to say, yes, you matter, what you do matters, and you do make a difference. So I think when we're looking at all of this, I think to look at it only as today and what happens today is a mistake. However, at the same time, we can look at it from today and say, but if we can do it, I'm talking about business right now, if we can find a better way, a faster way, a more efficient way, all of that translates to bottom line profit. And in our society, that's part of what drives us every day.
Some way we as a country and we as a marketplace have got to get back into long-term thinking, whether it's investments or whether it's, you know, whatever. And I think everybody is so caught up in short-term, gimme, 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 I want short-term satisfaction. How do we change the narrative there is the question.
Yeah, that's a really, I think, Jeff, you hit it. It's, you know, when we're dealing with publicly traded companies who have to answer to those quarterly returns. But you know what's happening is that even in the investment world, we're seeing new measures of sustainable value, right? We're looking at ways to measure companies and their commitment to sustainability as a value proposition, right? So I think that there are things that are changing. I don't have any magic bullet. I mean, that's the thing about this. There is no one answer to any of this. But the challenge, yes, short-term thinking, you know, let me take care of me. I'm not worried about the long term, but also Wall Street and the requirements in publicly traded companies that are looking for those quarterly returns, and the pressures are on bottom line, bottom line, bottom line, rather than a longer term return on investment. And this it takes time and it takes investment to get companies where they need to go.
But in business right now, I see that there's a paradigm shift going on to a large degree because of technology. I mean, technology is changing our world, and in some industries, I think it's changing so fast that people don't realize the ground is shifting underneath. And I've thought this, and tell me if I'm right, that paradigm shift has been turbocharged by this economy going down the tubes. That things are changing faster than maybe they would have because, out of necessity maybe, cutting cost.
I think, Jeff, we've got to find a better way. Bottom line. We've got to find a better way. We've got to find a better way to innovate. We've got to find a better way to meet the needs of our communities. We've got to look at things differently than we've ever looked at it before. And I think in the best of worlds, sustainability does that. It requires people to asks different questions. It challenges you in a different way. And so I think, yeah, I think that you are correct. We have got to find a better way. And I think the economic pain we are feeling from the overdevelopment and the greed and graft that has occurred over the last years, I think it's causing us in a good way to pause, to reflect, and to say, if we could do this the way we really wanted to do it, if we could all come together, and you mentioned values earlier, you know, and coalesce around the values that say, yes, it's about me living a great life, and yes, but what about what am I doing that contributes to my community and to the world, not only from a business perspective, but also from the standpoint of just being a citizen of the world.
Just a couple of minutes, and I know I'm throwing you a big one here at the end for just a couple of minutes, but time has gone by so fast. The oil spill along the Gulf, and we taped this program in North Florida. So how is this going to be viewed over the long term? What will become of this? Will there be some good? Will there be some good from it?
Let's hope so. I think it gives us an opportunity when things happen in your own backyard. It becomes real. I think when you walk along our beautiful white beaches and you see these oil blots, or you can't get out in your boat on the water because of the oil spill, it has hit everyone in a very personal way, I think, whether it's business people or recreation people or whatever. So I think this has become a symbolic thing. The question is, will we pay attention to it? Will this, as soon as it leaves the headlines, also leave our psyche? Or will we remember, and will we figure out how we can create a more sustainable community along the Gulf Coast that respects oil and its purpose, but maybe finds an even higher purpose for oil and looks for alternative ways to meet our energy needs? As the national news media goes away from North Florida, goes away from southern Louisiana, then it starts to fade. So how do we keep it out front? I think we have to keep it out front, Jeff, and you know, we are involved with several community leaders right now looking at ways to keep the dialogue going. I think it is our responsibility as a community here in our own backyard to bring in some great thinkers. I think Interface and companies like Interface represent what can be done when you ask different questions. They represent big visions and big ideas, right? Yeah. And so what if we were bold enough to say, how can we do it differently in Northwest Florida or along the Gulf Coast? How can we create sustainable communities that bring economic value to our community, but also respect our environment and the needs of people here? I think we have great opportunity. I think in the oil spill, if we're willing as a community to keep the dialogue going, then this could have actually a very positive impact on us. Just real quick, it seems to me like the narrative has to be shifted from it being a political issue to it being a to it being a business and a human issue. Are we talking about sustainability? Yes. Absolutely, Jeff. And I think that's the biggest misconception about sustainability. I am, like I said, a business person. A business person who wakes every morning, has to make payroll. This is not just an issue about, you know, a tree hugger. This is about how do we create better models that, as Ray says, is not only the right thing to do, but the smart thing to do for us and our grandchildren. Good stuff. Interesting. Dr. Mona Amodeo joining us. She is an expert in sustainability. Thank you so very much for watching this edition of Conversations. If you've missed one of our shows, you can see it on the web at wsre.org/conversations. Just click on the episodes tab. And we're on Facebook. Just search out Conversations with Jeff Weeks. Your thoughts, ideas, and feedback greatly appreciated. In the meantime, I'm Jeff Weeks. Thank you so very much for watching. Take great care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.